So I'm very sorry that I will speak in English. So I would like to speak in French, but I'm not able to. And if I were, it wouldn't be a very nice French. So your language is music and mine not. So first of all, I want to say that for me a very interesting topic also for our theme is the beginning of the Bible. In the beginning of the Bible, I think you will know it. We have the scene. You have in the second narrative. We have the paradise, and in the center there is the tree of life. And then, well, the tree of life is a very common tree in the ancient Oriental world because it symbolizes the sun and the god, the sun god. But there is another tree, and this is the real interesting thing. It's the tree of knowledge. And when you are reading the Hebrew text very carefully, you will maybe be aware that it's very interesting that it's stated that you have the garden, and in the center the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge. This "and" is very ambiguous because you can think that this tree of knowledge is in the center, but it's also in a certain sense at the margin of this garden. And then it's not prohibited in the beginning that the tree of that Adam must not eat from the tree of life, but he must not eat from the tree of knowledge. And it seems that this tree, who is really unique, doesn't exist in the Oriental world. So that this tree, in a certain way, decenters also the tree of life. There is a lacuna, there is a fundamental lacuna which must not be occupied. Also, the nakedness in the beginning, in the paradise, nakedness seems possible because this lacuna is protected. But at the moment when it's conquered, we have a kind of totalitarian gaze. And this means it's a kind of pornographic view you have afterwards. There is no lacuna ever, and all becomes nothingness in this scene, in this sense. And one, I think, very important part of this narrative is the bet between the snake and man, because the snake tells you won't die. It's one of the second is that your eyes will clear up. So normally we are saying the snake is the great liar, but this is too simple. I think there is a much more serious problem behind that. It's a kind of central bet. If mankind will be able to make itself absolute, if it will become divine, if it will overcome in the end also mortality. So in a certain way it's a bet where God says or maintains by really putting at stake his godness, that mankind will not succeed to overcome mortality. I think that's a very important thing, and all the Bible deals with this problem. So could discuss it, but also the first attempt is mediated by genealogy, so that the father will live in the son and so on to overcome this kind of mortality. And I think that in our times and also in the digital world, that this kind of bet has become a new, it's become ever more and more dramatic. So because the digitalization means also to overcome death. So that's the first thing. The second introduction is another thought. I think you know, in the Bible, one of the main goals or one of the main images is the Holy Land, the Promised Land. And a Promised Land which is not directly reached. So, you know, the Torah ends with Moses' view to the Promised Land, but then we have to start up all again. And I think behind that thought is also that the Torah itself, the text itself, became more and more the Promised Land. So we have a kind of transformation of also the cartography and the geography in a more and more symbolic order. So our categorical world becomes more and more text. I think that's a very important dynamic in the Bible. You can also observe this in the Gospels. So the first Gospel, the Gospel of Matthew, is still within more or less the Holy Land. Then Mark, we have some scenes also around it in the Syro-Phoenician realm, and Luke with the story of with the Acts of the Apostles goes to the whole Roman Empire. But then the fourth Gospel more and more replaces the categorical geography by a symbolic geography which extends to heaven, and so encompasses not only the geographic world but also the symbolic world. So in this way we can say that it has a very old tradition, this new creation in text, this new creation. It's not, of course, a digital world in sensu stricto, the Bible, but I think the important thing is that the geographical, cartographic categories are not the ultimate ones. But I think the very important thing is that this new kind of symbolic system, that this text which replaces in a certain way the categorical world, opens also up for a new experience, for new encounters. I would say it's a text which does not protect the reader from vulnerability, but really is like a second skin who opens to the other. I think that's the very decisive thing we have. As Christians, we have also a kind of artificial body, and this artificial body is the scripture, but this scripture is pure porosity, and so also opens up to vulnerability. And I think that here something with digitalization changes. So this is the second introduction. Then a third consideration is, I think in recent years we have a lot of new kind of mythology. So now the young people, they are always more living from series to series, TV, Netflix. So it's the decisive system, and it's much more important how Game of Thrones is ending than who is the president of France or the United States or who is the Pope. And it's really an encompassing thing which structures our life. And I think there were some very, very important series, so like Westworld and Battleship Galactica, who are really dealing with digital worlds and with artificial intelligence. And I observed in this series one interesting thing, that the borders between the biological life, or you can also say between our world of flesh and the digital world, or also the artificial life, becomes more and more fluid. So if you look at Battleship Galactica, the cyborgs or the Cylons, some of them even don't know anymore to be Cylons. So this is very, I think this is of great significance. And on the other hand, also in Westworld, it's a very interesting thing how the main figures, who are artificial ones, become human. And one of these central acts of becoming human is combined with conversion. It's I think it's the absolute decisive category. So when algorithms begin to converse, when they are able to change their direction, maybe because of traumatic experience, which in Westworld is, I think, very well described. But when they are able to change direction, when they are able to convert, then they are really, they make the step to the human. And so for me, when I was reflecting upon what is the really essence of a world which is not a pure algorithm, so maybe this is the dream of the digital, that we have an algorithm which works with nobody who has really to start it. So which is like a perpetuum, I don't know, the perpetuum mobile, and it's the decisive thing that the world of the Bible is a world of conversion. And the title of our project is Gods and the Digital. And of course you can think that there are a lot of digital worlds, and there are a lot of references, but I would say in a certain way this title, Gods and the Digital, this plural is that maybe we have two kinds of gods. We have one kind of God who is like the absolute algorithm which determines all. So the old dream of human being, which condemned in the Bible, but which is also at the basis, which is the fundament of our digital world, of our metaphysical world, this dream should come true with digital world. So the absolute all-encompassing algorithm which does not need to change direction. The societas perfecta, in a certain way, is also an expression of it. And on the other hand, there is maybe a God which is not the all-encompassing algorithm, but which has to be thought starting from conversion. So normally we think in theology, we begin with God, and then of course we are developing categories and God the creator and so on, the redeemer. But I think from a phenomenological standpoint and also from a biblical standpoint, God has something, or the experience of God has something to do with this kind of turning around, with this kind of conversion. And I want to give some examples of it. I think it's also, but I don't want to deepen it, to unfold it now, because it's not the time, but it's also a very central category of Hegel when he speaks about conversion of consciousness, which is the decisive point of dialectic, I would say, but also in the late Foucault, when he speaks in his lectures about the hermeneutics of the subject, conversion becomes a very decisive category. But what's more interesting for me is that this conversion is also a decisive category in the Bible. And what is the decisive point? I would say not the conversion of Israel or the conversion of the sinner or the conversion of human being, but the decisive point is that even God converts. So we have, if we start with the Bible and we are thinking about the flood, it's God who changes his course. It's a part of the Bible, or a narrative I love particularly, is the book of Jonah. So Jonah is the one who refuses, but not his conversion, but he refuses the idea that God might convert. So this is so he's even ready to become a traitor of himself. He wants to die, a traitor of God. He wants to escape, and a traitor of human being, of Asur. He is ready to sacrifice it, because the thought of a divine conversion is not possible for him. It's not bearable. And also in the Gospel we have this very beautiful encounter between Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman. So where Jesus in a certain way changes his course. And I think it's important. So why does Jesus at the beginning neglect the healing of the child of this Syrophoenician? I think there is only one motive. He couldn't, because also he has to respect in a certain way borders. So if you look at the Gospel of Mark, the first chapter where we have really a very rich scenario, the first persons and the persons, it's a wrong description, but the first entities, I don't know how to name them, and the only ones who are in the whole gospel, who are really recognizing Jesus, are the demons. So, and in the first chapter, the demon, which has to leave the obsessed, this demon says, you are the holy of God. And this is a very, very high confession. It's not a simple one, because it's the holy name of God. It's the tetragrammaton. So it's really the climax of confession. And these demons are, in the ancient world, the aperon without limits, without borders. And maybe they are really realizing who Jesus is, because there is also, by all the abyss between Jesus and the demons, a kind of not relatedness, but similarity, because also Jesus is the one who really is ready to transcend borders, but he is not and also his many people around him, they accused him to be a demon, or also the Lord of the demons. And here Jesus reacts really angry. So why is this? Because he is not the one, and I think this encounter with the Syrophoenician demonstrates it, who annihilates all borders, but who is able to change them. And I think that's the decisive point, the difference between the biblical act of conversion, which means also to a little bit to how could you say, not replace, but a little bit to change borders, to be subversive towards borders. This is the one decisive thing. And the other thing is the opposite. I'm finishing. The opposite is really to annihilate all borders. And I think this is the very decisive question. Our digital world tends to annihilate the borders, and there is no conversion possible anymore, because conversion means to reset borders. This is a world without borders, without exit, therefore. At least there is a potential. And I think this should be the discussion. Is there a possibility to connect the digital world with conversion, with this kind of changing borders? Or does it mean, or is it only the will to annihilate this kind of borders? So this would be my decisive question.